Pretty easy. And this won't take long at all. So let's just get started. First off, we have Pythagorean Theorem. I'm missing a side of a right triangle. And when you're missing the side of a right triangle, you always use good old Pythagorean Theorem. A squared plus b squared equals c squared. It doesn't matter what you call these sides as long as you call the longest side c. So a is a. B is 5, and C is 13. Five squared is 25. 13 squared is 169. Is A all by itself? No. What is in the way? 25. Also squared, but let's get rid of the 25 first. Minus 25 minus 25. And wouldn't you know it, we get a pretty little number. We get a pretty little number of 144. Is A all by itself now? No. What is in the way? That's squared. How do we get rid of it? Let's use yellow to square root. Square root everything. A is equal to 12. And normally I'd attach the positive or negative, but since this is Pythagorean Theorem, I don't need to. Do I have any units? No. So I'm just going to write out units because that's what good kids do. That's what the good student does. 12 units, baby. Okay? So that's Pythagorean Theorem. We solved for a square. We solved for the missing side of a right triangle. And by doing so, we square rooted both sides. I will be able to take the cube roots of numbers. Oh, it's the same meme. What the heck is that symbol? I know what it is. If this is a square root, then when you have the little 3 attached, that must mean the cube root. That's correct. That's correct. A cube root of a number is, if I were, and it's, the symbol's written there, but let me rewrite it again. This is what a cube root looks like. If I were to put a number here, or in this case, I'll put smiley face. The cube root of smiley face means what times itself is going to give me smiley face. Just like the square root was what times itself gives me the number, the cube root is what times itself gives me the smiley face. Okay? In other words, cube roots are the same as square roots, but with groups of 3. So just like with the square roots, we add perfect squares. Like I enjoy taking the square root of 4 because I get 2. And I enjoy taking the square root of 25 because I get 5. And the square root of 100 is 10. The square root of 99 is gross. The square root of 50 is an ugly number. I don't know because those two numbers that I just mentioned, 99, 50, 5, 10, 20, all of those numbers are not perfect squares. Similarly, I have numbers that if I take the perfect cube of them, I get beautiful answers, and those are called perfect cubes. So like 1 times 1 times 1 is a perfect cube, and 2 times 2 times 2 is a perfect cube, and 3 times 3 times 3. It's not like we have to memorize all of these, but it would be very helpful if you at least memorized these guys. What this is saying is if I took the cube root of 1, I get 1. If I took the cube root of 8, I get 2. If I took the cube root of 27, I get 3. So if I took the cube root of 729, I get, let me see here. Oh, 9. So we might go back and reference this chart every now and then. Again, I don't expect you to have them all memorized. I only have 1 through 6 memorized, and 10, 11 too. But, you know, it's not the worst idea to just be able to know these. And these are familiar looking numbers. These aren't like wacky, outrageous numbers that you're going to be like, oh, I have no clue what 125 is. Ooh. Yes, you do. So I'm going to find the cube root of 1. What times what times what is 1? Well, 1 times 1 times 1 is 1. The cube root of a negative. Well, that's strange. What times what times what is a negative? You know what? A negative times a negative times a negative is a negative. You know why? Because a negative times a negative is a positive, and then you have a negative left over. So the cube root of a negative is a negative. The cube root of a negative is a negative. The cube root of a negative is a negative. The cube root of a negative is a negative. So what's the cube root of 343? 7. Problem 3. The cube root of a fraction. I know what I do. If it's any similar to a square root, then the cube root of a fraction is going to be a fraction. Oh, look, a negative. The cube root of a negative is a negative. The cube root of a negative is a negative. The cube root of a negative is a negative. The cube root of a negative is a negative. So this is a negative. The cube root of 27 is 3. The cube root of 1,000 is 10. Where is it? 10. There you go. So the cube root of 27 over 1,000 is 3 over 10. And don't forget, the cube root of a negative is a negative. Easy, baby. To undo the cube, use the square root. Cube root, just kidding. To undo a cube, use the cube root. Remember, to undo a squared, use a square root. So to undo a cube, use a cube root. What you do not need is the positive or negative symbol. That's right. You do not need the positive or negative symbol with cubes. So if I wanted to solve x cubed equals 316, let me write it out. X cubed equals 216. I would say is x all by itself. No, what's in the way? There's a cube in the way. How do I get rid of a cube? You cube root it. That crosses out. X equals, and the cube root of 216, let's go back, I think is 6. It is. The cube root of 216 is 6. In other words, 6 times 6 times 6 is 216. The reason why we don't include the positive or negative is because negative 6 times negative 6 times negative 6 is not positive 216. It's not. Cubes is different. Cubes is different. Let's watch a video.
All right, I have to solve for x, and the way I solve for x is taking a cube root. Why a cube root? Because I have a cube in the way. But what I also have in the way is this 3 lingering out in front. So I have to divide that from everything. And that leaves me with x cubed equals negative 81 divided by 3 is negative 27. Now, in order to get rid of a cube, I have to cube root both sides. Okay, that makes x all by itself. Now, what cube root means is what times itself gives me that number. In other words, what times what gives me negative? Well, a negative times a negative times a negative gives me a negative. And what times what gives me 27? 3. 3 times 3 is 9, times 3 is 27. So negative 3 times negative 3 is positive 9, times negative 3 again is negative 27. My answer is negative 3.
Cool, man. Wow, what a cool dude. So is Z all by itself? No. What's in the way? A cubed is in the way. How do I undo a cubed? You cube root both sides. That crosses out. Z equals the cube root of a negative is a negative. And as we learned from before, the cube root of 1,000 is 10. So the cube root of negative 1,000 is negative 10. Z equals negative 10. What this means is negative 10 times negative 10 times negative 10, it's 1,000. Negative 10 times negative 10 is 100. So 100 times negative 10 is negative 1,000. Is my sound on? I'm probably going to want my sound. Nope. Is B all by itself? No. What's in the way? Well, I have two things in the way. I have a 3 living in front, and I have a cube in the way. I'm going to divide both sides by 3 first. And the reason why I want this on is because I don't know what 1,029 divided by 3.
The answer is 343.
Is B all by itself now? No. What's in the way? Cube. How do I get rid of that cube? I cube root both sides. B equals, I don't know what that is. I think it's 7. What's the cube root of 343?
The cube root of 343 is 7.
Remember, when you cube root both sides, you do not need the positive or negative symbol, or the plus or minus. Ugly. Is M all by itself? No. What is in the way? I have a negative 1/5 attached to M, and I have an 8 floating around. Which one should I get rid of first? The minus 8 or the 8? So I minus 8 and I minus 8. Boom, boom. 33 minus 8 is 25. And that leaves me with negative 1/5 M to the third. Is M all by itself? No. I have a negative 1/5 attached to M. I could divide by a fraction, but instead of dividing a fraction, I'm going to multiply a reciprocal. Instead of dividing a fraction, multiply a reciprocal. Wait a minute. Negative 5 over 1 is just the same as negative 5. So you cross out and you cross out. Negative 5 times 25 is negative 125. That equals M cubed. Is M all by itself now? No, because I only have cubed in the way. The way I get rid of that cubed is I cube root both sides. I guess I don't need you anymore because I know what I'm doing. Cube root both sides. And the cube root of a negative is a negative. So I get negative. The cube root of 125 is 5. And M equals that. I don't know if you remember, but a couple days ago, we did finding the missing side of a square. And then the way we did that is we took the square root of the square and the square root of the area. Similarly, to find the volume, we're going to take the cube root of the volume to find the missing side of a cube. So to find the missing side of a cube, you take the cube root of the volume. What does that look like? Well, the volume is 1/27 feet cubed. So how do I take the cube root of the volume? Well, I'm going to cube root that, and I'm going to cube root that. I'm going to cube root everything. The cube root of 1 is 1. The cube root of 27 is 3. And the cube root of feet cubed is just feet. And that's it. To find the missing side of a cube, you take the cube root of the volume, which is different from what we did a couple days ago, which was finding the missing side of a square. To find the missing side of a square, you square rooted the bottom, the area. It's crazy that to find the side of a square, you square root. And to find the side of a cube, you cube root. Oh, 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 oh. So in order to find the volume of that cube, I'm going to cube root everything. I don't know what that is. What's the cube root of 0.064?
The cube root of 0.064 is 0.4.
0.4 meters, because remember, I'm taking the cube root of that number, and I'm taking the cube root of meters cubed, which kills off that little 3 there. What's the cube root of 216? Was 6. So I get 6 inches. What this means is 6 inches times 6 inches times 6 inches gives me a volume of 216 inches cubed. Remember, if you forgot what volume is how much space or how much you could fill an object up with. And so in order to find the volume, we multiply all 3 sides of that rectangular prism. And in our case, we multiply all 3 sides of that cube. But we're doing reverse. And the reverse of multiplying all 3 sides is take the cube root of the volume. And that's that. There are 3 numbers that are their own cube roots. What are those numbers? If I take so what times what times what gives you its own number? -1 times -1 times -1 is -1. 0 times 0 times 0 is 0. And 1 times 1 times 1 is 1. Those are your 3.